Get your free copy of the complete tutorial at www.teachucomp.com/free.
Macros are small programs that record your keystrokes as you perform a task and then save the actions you performed as a Visual Basic module, a type of program file. When you run the macro later, it will repeat your keystrokes, thus repeating your actions. That's why they're great for automating repetitive tasks. For example, pretend that you wanted to place your name and your company's information in the upper left cell of a worksheet. You could use a macro to record your keystrokes as you create it once, and then run the macro in the future when you need to create that information again. It would repeat the exact same keystrokes that you entered, effectively repeating the process instantaneously. While you can see advanced options for creating macros on the Developer tab within the ribbon if it is enabled, you can also use the Macros group that appears on the View tab in the ribbon to create basic macros and play them back. In this lesson, we will examine how to record a basic macro using the commands found within this group on the ribbon. To begin to record a macro, you can click the Macros button in the Macros group on the View tab in the ribbon. From the drop-down menu that appears, select the Record Macro command. This will open the Record Macro dialog box. In the Record Macro dialog box, enter a name for your new macro into the Macro Name text box. Note that macro names cannot contain spaces. Next, select the name of the workbook to which you want to attach the macro by selecting its name from the Store Macro In dropdown. If you do not change it, it will default to saving the macro into the current workbook. This is important only because a macro can only be run if it is attached to an open workbook or stored in the Personal Macro workbook, which we will discuss later. You can also create a custom keyboard shortcut to use in conjunction with the Control key by typing the desired shortcut key letter into the text box next to the Control+ sign. If you decide to do this, just make sure that you don't overwrite an existing keyboard shortcut. For example, the shortcut character of P would be a bad choice, as Control+P is already a keyboard shortcut for the print command. Now, if you aren't familiar with the keyboard shortcuts, it may be better if you don't assign one. When you're ready to start recording your actions, click the OK button. While recording your macro, you cannot use your mouse very much, and you should minimize your mouse movements during the recording of the macro. Instead, try to use your keyboard as much as possible. Once you've finished recording your macro, click the Macros button that appears in the Macros group on the View tab in the ribbon. Then select the Stop Recording command in order to stop recording the macro. Also, unlike macros in other Microsoft Office programs, in Excel the types of cell references that you make while recording a macro can be adjusted. For example, assume that when you began recording your macro, your active cell was cell A1. From there you clicked into cell D1. When Excel records you doing that, it can either record that action as a relative reference or an absolute reference. That action, if recorded using relative references, would make the active cell move 4 cells to the right of whatever cell it happened to be in when you started to play back the macro. If you record those actions in absolute terms, it will always move to cell D1 from wherever you start playing back the macro. Note that you can adjust the types of referencing used when recording a macro by clicking the Macros button in the Macros group and then choosing the Use Relative References command. By default, Excel macros use absolute references. You can click this button to switch to relative cell referencing during your macro. You can then click it again to switch back to absolute referencing when needed, during, or after recording. Now also remember that if you want to save a workbook that contains macros in Excel 2007 or later, you need to select the Excel Macro Enabled Workbook choice from the Save As dialog box.
Like what you see? Pick up your free copy of the complete tutorial at www.teachucomp.com/free.